So when is a cruiser not a cruiser? When it's a Ducati Diavel V4. Hi, Tony here, and welcome to my first ride review of the 2023 Ducati Diavel V4. Now, I've been looking forward to riding this beautiful machine for quite some time now, so I thought I'd share my experience with you. The 1158cc 90-degree V4 Gran Turismo engine sits nestled nice and low in this monocoque aluminium frame, and when you add that pretty aggressive and quite funky looking 4-exit exhaust, this really does give the bike a very mean look. Factor in this massive 8-inch rear wheel wrapped in a 240 section Pirelli Rosso Diablo 3 tyre, swoopy 20-litre fuel tank, big twin air intakes, sculpted seat and a funky rear light setup. I think it's a fantastic looking machine. It's as close as Ducati are going to get to a cruiser, but the riding position and the experience of riding this bike are anything but that. That V4 puts out a peak of 168 horsepower at 10,750 RPM with 126 Newton meters of torque that peaks at 7,500 RPM. But 85% of that torque comes in as low as 3,000 RPM. So to say that this bike has got a bit of grunt is definitely an understatement. Ducati chose the traditionally sprung valve Gran Turismo engine over the Desmo for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's a little bit softer, which suits this kind of bike. But secondly, this also means that this bike has a 36,000 mile valve clearance service interval, and the oil service is every 9,000 miles. So that should make it a little bit easier to live with and potentially a little bit lighter on the wallet. It weighs in with a curb weight of 236 kilos, which isn't too bad at all, but because the centre of gravity is so low on this bike, you don't really notice that weight at all. Added to that, the seat height is only 790 millimeters, which makes this a very manageable bike indeed. To tame this beast, Ducati used Brembo Stylema radially mounted semi-floating 4-piston calipers on the front and a twin piston floating rear. Suspension is taken care of by a pair of 50mm fully adjustable upside down forks up front and a fully adjustable monoshock rear mounted to an aluminium single sided swing arm. This setup offers 120mm of travel at the front and 145mm at the rear. There's plenty of tech too. The backlit controls give access to a very clear 5-inch TFT screen to 4 riding modes: Sport, Touring, Urban and Wet. There's also 3 power modes. Now, each factory set mode offers a different power delivery and integration with the other systems, so cornering, ABS, cornering traction control and the wheelie control. However, you can go in and adjust each of those modes to your own personal preference. Cruise control comes as standard, as does the excellent up and down quick shifter, as well as launch control. Another piece of clever tech is the rear cylinder deactivation system. The bike will shut off the 2 back cylinders when they aren't required. This cuts down on fuel consumption and therefore emissions, as well as controlling the heat. So what will these beautiful looks and stunning engine set you back? Well, currently in the UK, the Diavel V4 in this thrilling back colour is 23,895. If you want it in the classic Ducati red, it's £300 cheaper at 23,595.
So we've gone through quite a lot of the specs. Let's talk about the riding experience. We'll start with ergonomics. It's a bit uncruiser-ish like in the riding position. Mid foot pegs, so they're sort of right underneath you. The bars are not particularly far forward, they're swept back towards you, but a nice width. And the low seat height all contribute to being a very comfortable riding position, but you are kind of canted forward a little bit more than you would be on most cruisers that I've ridden. This isn't a sit back kind of relaxed ride. You are definitely getting some weight towards that front wheel. Admittedly, that front wheel is quite a long way away, but you're definitely getting some weight over it. So I find it a very comfortable riding position. I've been riding in up now for quite a few hours. and I found it to be really good. It's a sort of bike that you could probably quite happily tour on. It feels very light and nimble, very flickable, more so than I would expect with that massive section rear tyre. I think you've probably noticed that a little bit through the suspension. This is essentially a gentleman's Panigale. It's like riding a Panigale in terms of performance. That V4 motor, which we'll get onto later on, is just mwah. But the riding position is very relaxed, and for an old duffer like me that maybe wants to experience a bit of that Panigale performance and that V4 howl, but doesn't want to hang themselves over the tank, this is a really good option. Now, because of that low seat height and low centre of gravity and nimbleness, it's a really easy bike to ride around town. I don't feel I'm reaching too far for the bars. These long triangular mirrors give me pretty good visibility. The seat's comfortable, it's nice and broad. Yeah, I've had no issues in terms of comfort at all. Quite happily jump on this and ride it all day long. Right, so let's talk a little bit about the engine, because this Gran Turismo V4 is an absolute stonker. I've been riding it a lot in touring mode. Sport mode is obviously much more aggressive, but in touring mode you still get the full power, you just get a softer delivery off of the throttle. And I just find that for everyday riding it's a nice option. There's definitely a switch between the modes. Urban is very similar as well, that just softens it off a little bit more. For me, I don't tend to mix and match modes a lot, so touring is a nice one that kind of does a bit of everything. And as I say, it doesn't detract from the performance of this bike. You know, if you want to get on with it, just a twist of that throttle and it just takes off like a scalded cat, and you've got that beautiful sound from that exhaust pipe. It really is a very intoxicating engine, nice and flexible. You can keep it in a relatively high gear, so there 32 miles an hour, so let's get down to 30 around about, yeah, 30 miles an hour in fourth gear out of this bend. If I roll it on, no issues, and the more you roll it on, the blurrier the scenery gets. It's just such a cracking engine, it really is. The other thing that I'd forgotten about riding four cylinders, I don't ride them very often, is the amount of engine braking that you get as well, and that's quite impressive on this bike as a definite. It's not too aggressive. Now, if you shut the throttle off, you get a nice amount of engine braking coming. Doesn't come in, it doesn't lurch you backwards and forwards. A little bit more aggressive on that in sports mode, obviously. And that quick shifter is just superb. Not had a single miss shift. Works flawlessly up and down. It's definitely not a laid back cruiser. And it handles really well. The suspension is a little bit firm. I haven't yet backed it off to see, you know, what difference that makes. But to be honest, I can live with it as it is on bumpy country lanes like this. It never gets out of shape. It never ties itself in knots. It's very precise. It's just a little bit harsher, and a lot of that will be down to that rear tyre. But it does a good job of it. Oh, that noise. I am definitely getting a case of the want. Oh, there you go, there's an example, pothole there, crashed through it a little bit. Yeah, I am definitely getting a case of the wants with this bike. It's a bike that I'd always liked the look of, but I thought, well, it's not really for me. And riding this has just been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I love it. I would certainly be happy to have one of these in my garage. The stumbling block is that £24,000 or £23,000 price tag, but if you've got the money to spend on one and you want something that is fun to ride but still comfortable, you could tour on this. You know, they do an optional luggage set for it with some panniers and bits and pieces, so although it might not be massively capacious, I think a couple of small panniers on the back and a rucksack, maybe a tank bag, you could certainly go touring on this machine, no problem whatsoever. All in all, it is a fantastic bike. It looks good, it sounds great, it goes like a bat out of hell. It certainly draws attention, it turns a lot of heads. Filling it up with fuel or stop by the side of the road or just pulling up somewhere, people would always come over and have a chat about it. I've only been riding it for a week or so, and already I've had numerous conversations with people who want to come over and have a chat about it. It is a fantastic bike, and if you haven't ridden one and it's something that catches your fancy, definitely get yourself to your local Ducati dealership and take one out. I think you'll absolutely love it. Whether I could trust myself on one is another question. Oh, Ducati, what have you done? For a bike that is kind of long and low, it's really nimble, very precise steering. I'm at that age now where leaning over a tank, clasping some grip-ons doesn't really appeal, but you can have most of the fun of a bike like that in a much more comfortable package on the Diavel V4. It's a hell of a thing. I'll talk briefly about fuel economy. We've got a 20 litre tank. I've been averaging about 42 miles per gallon since I've had this, which isn't too bad when you consider what is pushing this thing along. And I must admit, I've not really been taking it particularly careful, and I've not done a lot of motorway or long A road stretches on it, so this has been predominantly this kind of twisty road and smaller A roads. So 42 miles per gallon out of this isn't too bad at all. Not quite sure what range that would give. I'll try and work it out and put something on the screen, but it is also telling me that I do need to go and get some fuel, which is what I'm going to go and do now. Oh man, love it, love it, love it, love it.
So I hope you found this video useful. However, if you do have any questions about the Diavel V4, then let me know in the comment section down below. A like and subscribe are always gratefully received, and all that leaves me to say is until next time, thanks for watching, take care, ride safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.